Little moments can change everything. That's what they say, right? That the smallest decisions can alter the course of your life in ways you could never imagine. For one young boy in Chicago, 1992, that moment came down to a choice between lunch for a week or a poster of his hero. The hallways of Lincoln Middle School buzzed with the usual Monday morning chaos. Sneakers squeaked against freshly waxed floors. Locker doors slammed shut, and the air hummed with weekend stories that grew more fantastic with each retelling. Among the sea of students moved a thin, quiet boy clutching a brown paper bag and a worn backpack. His eyes stayed fixed on the floor, navigating the hallway with the practiced precision of someone used to going unnoticed. This was Jason Robles, 12 years old, and already understanding what it meant to be invisible. Not the cool kind of invisible from comic books, the kind that meant teachers sometimes forgot his name, other kids didn't pick him for teams, and even the bullies usually overlooked him in favor of more interesting targets. Jason's father had left 3 years ago. Something about needing space, something about promises to call that turned into birthday cards that eventually dwindled to nothing. His mother, Dawn McKee, worked double shifts at the hospital as a nurse's aide, leaving before Jason woke up and often returning after he'd gone to bed. They got by, but just barely. The apartment was small, the heat sometimes unreliable, but they managed. Dawn made sure Jason always had clean clothes, food in his lunch bag, and all the love she could possibly give in the hours they had together. What Dawn couldn't give Jason was what every other kid seemed to have that year. Anything. With Michael Jordan's name on it, in 1992, Chicago was in the grip of Bulls fever. The team had just won their second consecutive NBA championship, and Michael Jordan wasn't just a basketball player, he was a superhero who happened to live among them. Kids wore his number, mimicked his moves on playground courts, and plastered their walls with his image. Jason's walls remained bare, not because he didn't worship Jordan like everyone else. He did, possibly more than anyone, but because posters cost money they didn't have. Extra money went to the emergency fund or toward the community college classes Dawn was taking on her rare days off. There was never money for something as frivolous as a poster. Jason slipped into his first period class and took his usual seat near the back. He pulled out his math homework, double-checking his answers as other students filtered in. Christopher Fletcher, the tallest boy in their grade and star of the school basketball team, dropped into the seat in front of Jason, immediately turning to talk to Corey Anderson beside him. "Did you hear? The new Jordan posters came in at Marvin's sports shop," Christopher said, his voice carrying through the room. "My dad's taking me after school to get one." "Lucky," Corey replied. "My mom says I have too many already." Jason pretended to be absorbed in his homework, but his ears perked up. New Jordan posters. He'd seen Marvin's shop window on his walk to school, small, cramped, with jerseys and memorabilia crammed into every corner. He'd never been inside. There was no point in torturing himself by looking at things he couldn't have. Ms. Meyer, their math teacher, called the class to order, and Jason pushed thoughts of Michael Jordan away. He needed to focus. Good grades were his ticket out, his mother always said. Basketball dreams were fine for some kids, but Jason knew his 5'0" frame wasn't taking him to the NBA. His brain was his only shot. At lunch, Jason sat alone, methodically unpacking his brown paper bag, a peanut butter sandwich, an apple, and a small carton of milk he'd bought with the lunch money his mother gave him each morning. 2 tables over, Christopher Fletcher held court, showing off a basketball magazine with Jordan on the cover. "They're selling the championship poster, the one from Sports Illustrated," Christopher was saying. "Only $15, $15. Jason did the math automatically. That was a week's worth of lunch money. His mother gave him $3 each day, just enough for milk and a hot lunch if he wanted it. He usually saved part of it by bringing lunch from home, tucking the extra dollar into an old coffee can in his closet. He'd been saving for new sneakers. His current pair were a half size too small and developing holes at the toes. The coffee can currently held $23, accumulated over months of small sacrifices. If he took 15 of that for a poster, the sneaker fund would be devastated. Plus, it felt wrong to spend money on something his mother would consider unnecessary. But then again, Michael Jordan, the man who seemed to defy gravity, the player Jason stayed up watching whenever the Bulls games were on their temperamental television. Sometimes, when his mother worked nights, Jason would turn the volume low and imagine Jordan was showing him personally how to fake a defender, how to hang in the air just a moment longer than seemed possible. The rest of the school day passed in a blur. Jason found himself calculating and recalculating his money situation. If he used the $15 from his savings and didn't buy milk at lunch for how long? Too long. His mother would notice. She was tired, but never too tired to make sure he was eating properly. But then, as the final bell rang, Jason had another thought. If he used his lunch money for the week, $3 a day for 5 days, that was exactly $15. He could bring lunch from home every day and just drink water instead of milk. His mother wouldn't know, and by next week, when he'd need lunch money again, he'd have figured something out. Maybe he could do extra chores for Mrs. Barron next door. She sometimes gave him $5 for helping with her groceries. Before he could talk himself out of it, Jason found himself walking toward Marvin's sports shop instead of taking his usual route home. Just to look, he told himself. Just to, see the poster. The shop was crowded with kids from various schools, all talking loudly and handling merchandise. Marvin, a heavy-set man with thinning hair and glasses, kept a watchful eye from behind the counter. Jason slipped inside, feeling immediately out of place among kids who could actually afford to buy things. And then he saw it. On the back wall, a huge display of the new poster. Michael Jordan, arms outstretched in victory, confetti falling around him, the NBA championship trophy gleaming beside him. It was beautiful. Even from across the store, Jason could see the intensity in Jordan's eyes, the pure joy and triumph. It was everything he admired about his hero, the work, the struggle, the victory. "You buying or just looking, kid?" Marvin called out, noticing Jason staring. "Just looking," Jason replied automatically, his hand instinctively covering the pocket where his lunch money sat. "Well, look with your eyes, not your hands," Marvin said, not unkindly, before turning his attention to a customer ready to pay. Jason moved closer to the poster display. Christopher Fletcher was there with his father, picking out not just one, but 2 posters. He gave Jason a brief nod of recognition, more acknowledgement than Jason usually got, before returning to his selection process. For 15 minutes, Jason circled the store, working up his courage. Other kids came and went, most leaving with purchases. The Jordan posters were selling fast. What if they ran out? The thought of missing his chance made his heart race. Finally, when there was a lull in customers, Jason approached the counter, his hand clutching the 15 $1 bills he'd been saving for lunches. "Decided to buy something?" Marvin asked, raising an eyebrow. "The Jordan championship poster, please," Jason said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Good choice, kid. Last one in stock, actually." Marvin reached for the poster tube behind him. 15 even with tax. Jason carefully counted out his dollars, placing them on the counter. Each bill represented a lunch, a small sacrifice. Marvin counted them again, gave Jason a curious look, then shrugged and handed over the poster tube. "Take care of that. It'll be worth something someday," Marvin said. "Jordan's not just any player." "I know," Jason replied, and for the first time that day he smiled. "He's the greatest." The walk home felt different with the poster tube clutched in his hands. Jason's stomach grumbled. He'd been so nervous in the store that he hadn't eaten his afternoon snack, but he didn't care. He had a piece of history, a piece of greatness. The apartment was empty when he arrived, as expected. His mother wouldn't be home until after midnight. Jason went straight to his small bedroom and cleared a space on the wall above his bed. Carefully, reverently, he unrolled the poster and smoothed it flat. He didn't have proper poster tack, so he used small pieces of tape at the corners, promising himself he'd buy proper supplies with his next bit of saved money. Then he stepped back and looked at it. Michael Jordan, the greatest basketball player in the world, now watched over Jason's small bedroom. Something about having Jordan there made the room feel less empty, less lonely. Worth it, Jason whispered to himself. That night, he went to bed hungry, but happy. One day without lunch was nothing. He'd figure out tomorrow when it came. The next morning, Jason packed his lunch as usual, peanut butter sandwich, apple, but no money for milk. He'd drink water from the fountain, no big deal. As he left, he took one last look at his poster, drawing strength from Jordan's triumphant pose. At school, things proceeded normally until lunch period. Jason sat at his usual table, unpacked his sandwich and apple, and was about to get up for water when Holly Humphreys slid onto the bench across from him. Holly was in his English class, quiet like him, but smart. They'd worked on a group project once, and she'd been nice, not making him speak in front of everyone. "No milk today?" she asked, nodding toward his lunch. Jason shrugged. "Not thirsty." Holly seemed about to say something else when a commotion at the cafeteria entrance drew everyone's attention. The principal, Mr. Garcia, was walking in, accompanied by a tall man in a baseball cap and sunglasses. Even with the attempt at a disguise, there was no mistaking that walk, that presence. Gasps and whispers spread through the cafeteria like wildfire. "Is that no way? It can't be." But it was. Michael Jordan himself was standing in their school cafeteria, removing his sunglasses and scanning the room as stunned students and teachers stared in disbelief. "I'm looking for a student," Jordan said, his voice instantly recognizable. "Jason Robles." The cafeteria fell silent, then every head turned toward Jason, who sat frozen, his sandwich halfway to his mouth. For the first time in his life, Jason was not invisible. For the first time, everyone saw him. And more importantly, Michael Jordan was looking for him. In that frozen moment, Jason wondered if he was dreaming. His sandwich slipped from his fingers, landing with a soft plop on his lunch bag. The cafeteria had gone from chaotic noise to pin-drop silence in seconds, with only the hum of the vending machines breaking the stillness. Michael Jordan, the real, actual Michael Jordan, stood just 20 feet away, looking directly at him. Jason felt Holly kick him gently under the table. "He's asking for you," she whispered urgently. Principal Garcia cleared his throat. "Jason Robles, would you come up here, please?" Jason's legs felt like they were made of cement as he stood. The scrape of his chair against the linoleum floor echoed through the silent cafeteria. Every step toward Michael Jordan seemed to take an eternity, with hundreds of eyes tracking his movement. He was acutely aware of his two small sneakers, his faded jeans, the peanut butter stain on his sleeve from making lunch that morning. When he finally reached them, Principal Garcia put a hand on Jason's shoulder. "This is Jason," he said unnecessarily. Michael Jordan was even taller in person than he appeared on TV. Jason had to crane his neck to look up at him. Up close, he could see the details that television couldn't capture. The intensity in Jordan's eyes, the confidence in his posture, the aura of greatness that seemed to surround him. "Hey, Jason," Jordan said, extending his hand. "I heard you're a fan." Jason stared at the outstretched hand, the same hand that had held 6 championship trophies, the same fingers that had released countless perfect jump shots. Somehow, he managed to lift his own hand and shake Jordan's. His voice, when he found it, came out as a croak. "Yes, sir." Jordan smiled, and it transformed his face from intimidating to approachable. "Call me Michael. Mind if we talk somewhere a little more private?" Principal Garcia immediately gestured toward the door. "My office is available, Mr. Jordan." As they Walked out of the cafeteria, the silence finally broke. The room erupted in excited chatter, and Jason could feel the stares burning into his back. Christopher Fletcher's mouth hung open in shock. Corey Anderson had dropped his chocolate milk. Even the lunch ladies were leaning forward over the serving counter to get a better look. The walk to the principal's office was surreal. Michael Jordan walked beside Jason, occasionally nodding at stunned teachers and students they passed in the hallway. He seemed completely at ease, while Jason's heart hammered so loudly he was sure everyone could hear it. Inside the principal's office, Mr. Garcia offered Jordan his chair, then excused himself, closing the door behind him. Suddenly, Jason was alone with the greatest basketball player in the world. "So," Jordan said, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees, bringing himself closer to Jason's eye level. "I heard a story about you yesterday that I couldn't stop thinking about." Jason blinked in confusion. "About me?" "Marvin from the sports shop is an old friend," Jordan explained. "We go way back to my rookie days. He called me last night and told me about a kid who came into his store and spent his entire week's lunch money on one of my posters." Heat rushed to Jason's face. How did Marvin know? Had he been that obvious? He said the kid counted out 15 $1 bills like they were gold coins, Jordan continued. And when he asked the kid if his parents knew he was spending his lunch money on a poster, the kid just looked down and shook his head. Jason stared at his sneakers, mortification washing over him. "I was going to figure something out," he mumbled. "I'm sure you were," Jordan said, and there was no judgment in his voice. "Marvin's known me long enough to call me directly. He described you and I asked around, found out where you went to school. Thought I should come see this poster myself, sure it was worth a week of lunches." Jason's head snapped up. "It is! It definitely is. It's the best poster ever." Jordan laughed, a warm sound that immediately put Jason more at ease. "Well, I'd like to see it, and maybe meet your mom, too. Is she home now?" "No, sir. I mean, Michael. She works double shifts at Memorial Hospital. She's a nurse's aide." Something flickered in Jordan's eyes, understanding maybe, or respect. "Hard worker, huh?" Jason nodded. "The hardest. She takes classes too, whenever she can. She wants to be a full nurse someday." "Sounds like determination runs in your family," Jordan said. "Listen, I've got a car waiting outside. If it's okay with you and your principal, I'd like to see this poster that was worth skipping lunch for a week. Then maybe we can grab something to eat. You hungry?" As if on cue, Jason's stomach growled loudly. He'd been too nervous to eat his sandwich in the cafeteria, and now he was paying for it. Jordan laughed again. "I'll take that as a yes. What do you say? Your principal already called your mom at work to make sure it's okay." Jason's eyes widened. His mother knew. "She's not mad." "Mad?" "Kid, she sounded like she might cry. She's meeting us at your apartment in 20 minutes. Got permission to take a break." The next hour passed like a dream. The sleek black SUV with tinted windows, the security guard, Dennis Porter, who rode in the front seat next to the driver, the stunned faces of neighbors as Michael Jordan himself walked into their apartment building. Mrs. Barron from next door actually dropped her groceries in the hallway. Jason's hands trembled as he unlocked the apartment door. Suddenly, he was seeing it through Michael Jordan's eyes. The small living room with the worn sofa, the kitchenette with chipped countertops, the water stain on the ceiling that the landlord kept promising to fix. But Jordan didn't seem to notice any of that. Instead, he followed Jason to his bedroom and stopped in the doorway, his gaze immediately finding the poster carefully taped above the small bed. "Championship number 2, Jordan said softly. "That was a good night." "The best," Jason agreed, watching Jordan study the poster. "You beat Portland in 6 games. You hit 6 three-pointers in the first half of Game 1 and did the shrug because you couldn't believe it yourself." Jordan looked at him with surprise and what might have been appreciation. "You know your basketball." "I watch every game I can," Jason said. Sometimes I have to watch at Mrs. Barron's when our TV acts up, but I never miss a Bulls game if I can help it. The sound of keys in the front door made them both turn. Dawn McKee rushed in, still wearing her hospital scrubs, her hair escaping. From what had probably been a neat bun that morning, she stopped short at the sight of Michael Jordan standing in her apartment. "Oh my God," she breathed. "It's true. Ms. McKee," Jordan said, stepping forward to shake her hand. "Your son made quite an impression on a friend of mine yesterday." Dawn looked at Jason, confusion and something else, worry in her eyes. "What did you do, Jason?" Before Jason could answer, Jordan jumped in. "Made a hard choice, chose something. He wanted over something he needed, the kind of choice a kid shouldn't have to make." Dawn's face flushed. We're doing fine. Jason never goes without what he needs." "Mom," Jason said quickly, "it wasn't like that. I chose to spend my lunch money. Michael's friend Marvin owns the sports shop, and he called Michael to tell him, and I wanted to meet the kid who values my poster more than lunch." Jordan finished for him. "That's dedication." Some of the tension left Dawn's shoulders, but her eyes still held concern as they flicked between her son and the basketball superstar standing in their small apartment. "Well, I appreciate you coming, Mr. Jordan, but please, call me Michael, and I was hoping to take you both to lunch. Jason here has missed a meal, and I bet you have too." Dawn automatically touched her stomach, as if just remembering she hadn't eaten. "That's very kind, but I insist," Jordan said, with the smile that had sold millions of sneakers worldwide. "I know a place nearby that makes great burgers. Private booth in the back where we won't be disturbed." 15 minutes later, they were seated in the back room of Mabel's diner, a place Jason had walked past countless times, but never entered. The owner, an older woman with bright red lipstick, had nearly fainted when Jordan walked in. She personally showed them to a secluded booth and hung a reserved sign on the entrance to the back room. Over cheeseburgers, fries, and milkshakes, the initial awkwardness began to fade. Jordan asked Jason about school, about basketball, about his favorite Bulls players besides himself. Jason answered eagerly, forgetting to be nervous as they discussed Scottie Pippen's defense and Horace Grant's rebounding. Dawn was quieter, watching, her son with a mixture of pride and something like wonder. She only spoke up when Jordan asked about her nursing classes. "It's slow going," she admitted. "One class at a time is all I can manage with work. But you're doing it," Jordan said. "That's what counts. Persistence." As they were finishing their meal, Jordan's security guard, Dennis, approached the table. "10 minutes, MJ. Press got wind you're here." Jordan nodded, then turned back to Jason and Dawn. "Before the circus arrives, there's something I wanted to talk to you about." He reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope, sliding it across the table to Dawn. "Marvin told me Jason spent his lunch money on that poster. I'd like to make sure he doesn't have to make that choice again." Dawn didn't touch the envelope. "Mr. Jordan, that's very generous, but we don't need—" "It's not a handout," Jordan interrupted gently. "It's a thank you for being a true fan, for showing me what my game means to kids like Jason." He pushed the envelope closer. "It's a year's supply of lunch money, and maybe a little extra for some proper poster frames and a few more Bulls items for his collection." Jason's eyes widened, but his mother's face flushed again. "I provide for my son, Mr. Jordan." "Mom," Jason whispered, embarrassment creeping back. "I know you do," Jordan said, unfazed. "Jason told me all about your double shifts, your classes. He's proud of you, but even the strongest players need teammates sometimes." Dawn hesitated, then slowly took the envelope. "Thank you," she said quietly. "There's something else," Jordan continued. "The Bulls have a scholarship program for promising students, full ride to any college in Illinois after high school. Academic, not athletic. Jason's teachers say he's one of their best students." "Yo, talk to my teachers?" Jason asked, astonished. Jordan smiled. "I did my homework before coming to your school, just like you should keep doing yours because I'm nominating you for that scholarship." 4 years from now, when you graduate, it'll be waiting for you." Dawn's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes suddenly bright with tears. That would be life-changing," Jordan finished for her. "Just keep those grades up, Jason. Deal?" "Deal," Jason whispered, unable to believe what was happening. As they prepared to leave, navigating through the small crowd that had gathered outside the diner, Jordan put a hand on Jason's shoulder. "One more thing," he said, pulling a basketball from a bag Dennis handed him. He uncapped a marker and wrote across the surface, "To Jason, always believe." "Michael Jordan, this is worth a lot more than that poster," Jordan said, handing it to him. "But don't you dare sell it for lunch money." Jason laughed, clutching the ball like it was made of gold. "Never." Outside, before climbing into his SUV, Jordan knelt to Jason's eye level. "You know what impressed me most about you spending your lunch money on that poster?" Jason shook his head. "That you were willing to sacrifice for something that mattered to you. That's rare, especially in someone your age." Jordan's expression turned serious. "But remember, some sacrifices aren't worth making. Your health, your education, those always come first. Understand?" "Yes, Michael," Jason said, nodding solemnly. Jordan straightened up. "I expect great things from you, Jason Robles. Don't let me down." As the SUV pulled away, Jason stood on the sidewalk with his mother, the signed basketball tucked securely under his arm. Dawn put her arm around his shoulders. "Did that really just happen?" she asked, sounding dazed. Jason looked down at the basketball, the ink still fresh on its surface. The weight of Jordan's words settled on him, not a burden, but a challenge, a belief. "Yeah," he said, "it really did." By the next morning, the story had spread beyond Lincoln Middle School. A local reporter had been in Mabel's diner when Michael Jordan arrived, and by evening, a short segment appeared on the local news. "Basketball legend makes special visit to young fan." The camera caught Jordan emerging from the diner, his hand on Jason's shoulder, the signed basketball clearly visible. The reporter hadn't gotten any quotes. Dennis Porter had made sure of that, but the images told enough of a story to capture public interest. Jason arrived at school to find he was no longer invisible. Students who had never spoken to him suddenly knew his name. Christopher Fletcher asked to see the basketball during first period, handling it with reverence before reluctantly returning it. Even Ms. Meyer paused before starting class to ask Jason about meeting his hero. "Was he nice?" she asked, genuine curiosity in her voice. "The nicest," Jason replied, surprised to find himself the center of attention, but not entirely uncomfortable with it. By lunchtime, the questions had multiplied. Jason sat at his usual table, but this time it filled with classmates eager to hear every detail. Holly Humphrey slid in beside him, giving him a small smile that somehow calmed his nerves. "You don't have to tell them everything," she whispered. "It's okay to keep some of it just for you." Jason appreciated that. There were parts of yesterday he wanted to keep private. The way Jordan had looked at the poster in his bedroom with real interest, the conversation about his mother's hard work, the envelope that now sat in Dawn's dresser drawer. Those moments weren't for sharing. Instead, he told his classmates about Jordan's handshake, his laugh, how he knew all about the Bulls' statistics and strategies. He described the security guard, the black SUV, the way Mabel herself had served them their burgers. With each detail, he could see the awe in their eyes, the same awe he had felt standing in the presence of greatness. But as the initial excitement began to fade, an unexpected feeling crept in. A whisper from Tyler Donaldson caught Jason's ear. "Bet it was just a publicity stunt. Jordan's got a new shoe coming out next month." The comment stung more than Jason expected. Was that all yesterday had been? A calculated public relations move? He wanted to believe it had been real, that Michael Jordan had genuinely cared about a kid who spent his lunch money on a poster. After school, Jason turned down offers to hang out at the mall. something that had never happened before, and walked home alone. He needed time to think. The signed basketball sat in his backpack. He hadn't wanted to leave it at home, but he also hadn't wanted to show it off all day. It felt too personal, too significant. When he reached his apartment, he was surprised to find his mother home. Dawn sat at their small kitchen table, papers spread out before her, a cup of coffee gone cold at her elbow. "Mom, you're not at work?" Jason set his backpack down carefully. Dawn looked up, dark circles under her eyes, but a smile on her face. "Took the afternoon off. After yesterday, I needed to sort some things out." She gestured to the papers. "Jordan's gift. It's more than lunch money, Jason." Jason approached the table, glancing at the papers. Bank statements, bills, his mother's class schedule from the community college. "How much more?" "Enough to cover your lunches through high school," Dawn said quietly. "Enough to pay off some medical bills from when you broke your arm last year. Enough that I could cut back to regular shifts and take more classes." She looked up at him, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "Enough to change things for us." Jason sank into the chair opposite her, stunned. "He didn't tell us that part." "No," Dawn agreed. "He just said it was for lunches and poster frames, but this..." She gestured at the papers again. "This is life-changing. And then there's the scholarship. Full college tuition, Jason. Do you understand what that means?" He did. College had always been a distant dream, something his mother spoke about with determination but uncertainty. They'd save somehow, she always said. They'd find a way. Now suddenly the way had found them. "There's something else," Dawn continued, pulling a newspaper from beneath the stack of papers. "We made the front page of the Tribune's sports section." The headline read, "Jordan's greatest assist. NBA star helps young fan who traded lunch for memorabilia." Beneath it was a photo of Jason, Michael, and Dawn outside Mabel's diner. Jason was beaming, the signed basketball clutched to his chest. He looked different in the photo somehow, taller, more confident. "They called this morning," Dawn explained. "Wanted an interview? I said we'd think about it." Jason stared at the newspaper. Tyler Donaldson's words echoed in his mind. Just a publicity stunt. But the man in the photo with his hand on Jason's shoulder hadn't seemed like someone putting on a show for cameras. He'd seemed genuine, real. "What do you think, Mom?" Jason asked. "Was it just, for publicity?" Dawn considered the question seriously, as she did all of Jason's questions. "I think," she said slowly, "that even if it started that way, what happened yesterday was real. The way he talked to you about basketball, about school. He saw you, Jason. Not just a photo opportunity. You." The phone rang, interrupting their conversation. Dawn answered it, her expression changing from curiosity to surprise. "Yes, this is Dawn McKee. Yes, he's my son." "I see. That's very generous, but I'm not sure." She covered the mouthpiece and whispered to Jason, "It's the Bulls organization. They want us to be Michael's guests at tomorrow night's game, VIP seats." Jason's heart leapt, but then he saw his mother's hesitation. "What's wrong?" Dawn covered the phone again. "It feels like a lot, Jason. I don't want us to get caught up in something. I don't want you to be disappointed if this all fades away." Jason understood her concern. His father had made grand gestures too in the beginning. Weekend trips to the lake, promises of camping adventures and baseball games. All faded with time until there was nothing left but birthday cards, then nothing at all. But this felt different. Michael Jordan wasn't promising to be in their lives forever. He had simply recognized something in Jason. A sacrifice, a passion, and responded with generosity. No false promises, just a moment of connection and kindness. "I won't be disappointed," Jason said with certainty. "Whatever happens after this, we got to meet Michael Jordan. We got to talk to him. That's more than most people ever get." Dawn studied his face, then nodded, returning to the phone. "Yes, we'd be honored to attend. Yes, both of us." Thank you. After she hung up, Dawn explained the details. A car would pick them up tomorrow evening. They would have special access. Meet the team, watch the game from premium seats. It's against the Knicks, she added. Should be a good one. That night, Jason could barely sleep. He kept replaying moments from the day before. Jordan's handshake, his laugh, the way he'd studied. The poster with genuine interest. He also thought about the Tribune article, wondering who else had read it, who else now knew their story. The next day at school was even more surreal than the previous one. Now everyone had seen the newspaper. Teachers stopped him in the hallway to comment. Principal Garcia called him to the office to congratulate him and remind him to represent Lincoln Middle School with dignity at the game. By afternoon, Jason was almost relieved when final bell rang. He rushed home to find his mother already there, holding a package that had been delivered. "It's from the Bulls," she said, handing it to him. Inside, Jason found 2 Bulls jerseys, one in his size, one in his mother's, with Robles printed on the back. A note accompanied them. "For tonight, looking forward to seeing you both. MJ." Dawn ran her fingers over the jersey, a small smile playing on her lips. "Guess we're really doing this." The car arrived at 5:30, another black SUV with tinted windows, though Jordan wasn't inside this time. Instead, a friendly driver named Walter Lyons greeted them and held the door open. "Mr. Jordan arranged everything personally," he explained as they settled into the leather seats, "said to take good care of you both." Chicago's United Center loomed large as they approached, its exterior lit up against the evening sky. Crowds of fans streamed toward the entrances, a sea of red and black Bulls jerseys. Jason and Dawn, wearing their custom jerseys, followed Walter to a private entrance where a Bulls staff member named Elizabeth Thompson waited to escort them inside. "Michael wanted to make sure you got the full experience," Elizabeth explained, leading them through corridors Jason had never imagined he'd walk through. "You'll have access to the pre-game warm-up, the VIP lounge, and of course, your seats, which are right behind the Bulls bench." Jason tried to take it all in. The gleaming floors, the signed memorabilia lining the walls, the buzz of energy that permeated the building. They emerged courtside, just as the Bulls were beginning their warm-up. And there, taking practice shots. At the far basket was Michael Jordan. He spotted them almost immediately, raising a hand in greeting before jogging over. Several fans who had arrived early for the warm-up gasped and pointed as Jordan approached Jason and Dawn. "You made it," Jordan said, giving Jason a fist bump and nodding to Dawn. "Jerseys look good on you both." "Thank you for this," Dawn said, gesturing around the arena. "It's incredible. Least I could do for my biggest fan," Jordan replied with a wink at Jason. "Listen, I've got to finish warm-up, but Elizabeth will take care of you. Everything you need, food, drinks, whatever, just ask. And after the game, stick around. I want to introduce you to the team." As Jordan jogged back to join his teammates, Jason turned to his mother, his eyes wide. "Is this really happening?" Dawn put her arm around his shoulders, looking just as amazed as he felt. "I think it is." The game itself was everything Jason had dreamed watching Bulls games could be. Their seats provided a perfect view of the action, close enough to hear the squeak of sneakers on the court, the calls between players, even the occasional comment from coach Phil Jackson. Jordan scored 37 points, leading the Bulls to a narrow victory over the Knicks in a game that had the crowd on its feet for most of the fourth quarter. During timeouts, Jason noticed Jordan occasionally glancing back at them, once even giving him a thumbs up after a particularly impressive dunk. The gesture made Jason feel 10 feet tall. When the final buzzer sounded, Elizabeth returned to escort them to a private area near the locker rooms. They waited as players began to emerge, some stopping to sign autographs for the small group of VIPs gathered there. Scottie Pippen came over first, introducing himself to Jason and Dawn as though they wouldn't know who he was. B.J. Armstrong followed, and then Horace Grant, each taking time to chat with Jason about the game, asking if he played basketball himself. Just at the playground, Jason admitted. I'm not very tall. Neither was Muggsy Bogues, Grant pointed out, referring to the 5'3" Charlotte Hornets point guard. Didn't stop him. Finally, Jordan emerged, showered and changed into a stylish suit. Despite having just played an intense NBA game, he looked fresh and energetic as he approached them. What did you think? He asked Jason. Worth missing lunch. 4? Jason grinned. Worth missing a month of lunches. Jordan laughed, then turned serious. About that, I saw the Tribune article this morning. Didn't realize they'd run with the story like that. Is that okay? Dawn asked, concern crossing her face. More than okay, Jordan assured her, but it got me thinking. Your story about saving lunch money for something that matters, it resonated with a lot of people. My agent's been fielding calls all day. One of them was from my friends at Gatorade. Jason and Dawn exchanged confused glances. They're doing a new commercial, Jordan explained, about dedication, sacrifice, what it means to be a real fan. They want you both in it. With me, a commercial, Dawn repeated, stunned. On television. National campaign, Jordan confirmed. It pays well, too. Could help with those nursing classes. Jason could hardly believe what he was hearing. First meeting Jordan, then the Bulls game, and now a commercial? It was beyond anything he could have imagined when he walked into Marvin's sports shop just 2 days ago. Why us? He asked, genuinely puzzled. There must be thousands of kids who are bigger fans, who know more about basketball, but they didn't give up their lunch for a week, Jordan interrupted gently. That kind of sacrifice, that's real. That's the message Gatorade wants to share. He looked at Dawn. It's up to you, of course. Jason's a minor. You'd need to approve everything. Dawn seemed at a loss for words. This is a lot to take in. I understand, Jordan said. Take some time, think it over. Elizabeth has all the details. He checked his watch. I've got to run post-game commitments, but I meant what I said to Jason yesterday. I expect great things from him. He extended his hand to Dawn. You're raising an impressive young man, Ms. McKee. After Jordan left, Elizabeth provided them with a folder containing information about the commercial opportunity and arranged for Walter to drive them home. In the car, Jason and Dawn sat in stunned silence, the events of the evening washing over them. What are you thinking? Jason finally asked as they neared their apartment building. Dawn looked down at the folder in her lap, then at her son. I'm thinking your poster purchase might be the best money you ever spent. The next week passed in a blur of activity. After careful consideration and a thorough review of the contract with a lawyer provided by the Bulls organization, Dawn agreed to let Jason participate in the Gatorade commercial. Filming was scheduled for the following Saturday at the United Center, with additional scenes to be shot at Lincoln Middle School, which had eagerly granted permission once Principal Garcia learned of the opportunity. This is unprecedented exposure for our school, he told Dawn during a phone call, barely containing his excitement. We're thinking of establishing a Michael Jordan scholarship for future students inspired by Jason's story. Dawn listened politely, but remained cautious. The attention was overwhelming, and she worried about its effect on Jason. Fame, even the small-scale variety they were experiencing, could be fleeting and deceptive. She'd seen enough daytime talk shows about child stars to know the potential pitfalls, but Jason seemed to be handling it well. He remained focused on his schoolwork, politely answered questions from classmates without embellishment, and spent evenings helping Dawn prepare for her nursing exams. The only noticeable change was in his confidence. He stood a little straighter, spoke a little louder, raised his hand more often in class. I'm proud of you, Dawn told him the night before the commercial shoot. Not because of the commercial or meeting Michael Jordan, but because you've stayed yourself through all of this. Jason looked up from the basketball he'd been spinning on his finger. a trick he'd been practicing since receiving Jordan's signed ball. "Did you think I wouldn't?" "Honestly, I didn't know," Dawn admitted. "This is uncharted territory for both of us, but you've handled it with more maturity than most adults would. The commercial shoot itself was an education." Dawn and Jason arrived at the United Center at 7 a.m. to find it transformed into a bustling film set. Lighting equipment, cameras, and various crew members filled the normally spacious court. A woman named Stephanie Collins, the production assistant, greeted them and guided them through the process. "We'll do makeup first, then wardrobe will make sure your Bulls jerseys fit perfectly," she explained, leading them to a row of trailers set up outside. "Michael will arrive around 9. We'll shoot his scenes with Jason first, then the family scenes with all three of you." The concept of the commercial, as explained by the director, Gregory Wiggins, was simple but powerful. Jason's story would be dramatized, showing him saving his lunch money, buying the poster, and ultimately meeting his hero. The tagline would be dedication, sacrifice, greatness, Gatorade. "We're keeping it authentic," Gregory assured them. "No Hollywood embellishments. Your story is compelling enough as is." By the time Michael Jordan arrived, Jason had been through hair and makeup and was dressed in his Bulls jersey. The basketball star greeted him warmly, asking about school and whether the other kids were still making a fuss over him. "Not as much anymore," Jason said. "There's a new video game everyone's talking about now." Jordan laughed. "Fame is fleeting, probably for the best." The filming process was more tedious than Jason had imagined. Each scene required multiple takes, with Gregory calling for slight adjustments in positioning, expression, or timing. Jordan, clearly experienced with commercial shoots, moved through his marks with practiced ease, while Jason worked hard to follow directions and appear natural on camera. "You're a natural," Jordan told him during a break. "First time I did a commercial, I was so stiff they almost replaced me with a cardboard cutout." One scene required Jason to recreate the moment he'd counted out 15 $1 bills at Marvin's sports shop. Marvin himself had been invited to participate, playing his own role in the story. When Jason laid the bills on the counter, just as he had that day, Marvin's expression of recognition was genuine. "Just like déjà vu," Marvin commented between takes, except with better lighting. The most challenging scene came at the end of the day, the emotional moment when Jordan presented Jason with the signed basketball. Gregory wanted to capture the authentic feeling of that exchange, but after numerous takes, something felt missing. "It's too rehearsed now," the director sighed. "We've lost the spontaneity." Jordan considered this, then approached Gregory with a suggestion. They spoke quietly for a moment before the director nodded and called for the crew to reset. "Jason," Jordan said, returning to his mark, "let's try something different. I'm going to say something that wasn't in the script. Just react naturally." "Okay?" Jason nodded, curious but willing to try. The cameras rolled, and Jordan handed him the basketball, just as he had done that day outside Mabel's diner. But instead of the scripted line about not selling it for lunch money, Jordan placed both hands on Jason's shoulders and looked him directly in the eyes. "What you did, trading something you needed for something you believed in, that's the kind of choice champions make every day," he said, his voice low and sincere. "Not just in basketball, but in life. Remember that when things get tough, you've already proven you have what it takes." The words weren't rehearsed, weren't part of the commercial plan, but they resonated deeply. Jason felt tears spring to his eyes, not from sadness, but from the weight of what Jordan was saying, from the recognition that his small sacrifice had meant something to someone he admired so deeply. "Cut," Gregory called, his voice unusually soft. "That's it, that's the one." The crew, who had been chatting quietly between takes all day, fell silent. Even Dawn, watching from behind the monitors, wiped at her eyes. "Did I mess up?" Jason asked, suddenly self-conscious about his emotional reaction. "No," Gregory assured him, approaching with a rare smile. You gave us something real. That's what great commercials are built on. Authentic emotion. By the time they finished filming at the school the next day, Jason was exhausted but exhilarated. The experience had been unlike anything he'd ever imagined. Demanding, exciting, occasionally tedious, but ultimately rewarding. Watching professionals, like Jordan and Gregory work, had shown him what dedication to craft looked like up close. 3 weeks, Stephanie told them as they wrapped the final scene. That's how long it takes for post-production. The commercial should air during the playoffs next month. As they left the school, Dawn put her arm around Jason's shoulders. How does it feel, being the star of a national commercial? Jason considered the question. Weird, he admitted, but good weird, like I'm still me, but also something else. Fame changes things, Dawn said cautiously. People will see you differently. I know, Jason replied, but I'm still just a kid who likes basketball and wants to be an engineer someday. Dawn raised an eyebrow. An engineer? That's new. Jason shrugged. Been thinking about it. Building things, solving problems. Seems cool. The next 3 weeks passed more quickly than expected. Jason returned to his regular routine. School, homework, occasional playground basketball, while Dawn balanced work, classes, and fielding calls from relatives who had somehow heard about their upcoming commercial appearance. Then, one evening, during the first round of the NBA playoffs, it happened. They were watching the Bulls game against the Atlanta Hawks when the broadcast cut to commercials. Suddenly, there was Jason on screen, counting out dollar bills at Marvin's counter. Oh my God, Dawn whispered, grabbing Jason's hand. The commercial was beautifully shot, the lighting soft and golden, making even their small apartment look warm and inviting in the scenes filmed there. Jason's narration, recorded in a sound booth after the shoot, provided context. I saved my lunch money for a week to buy a poster of my hero. The story unfolded just as it had happened. The purchase, the empty lunch table, the surprise appearance at school. Then came the moment with the basketball, Jordan's unscripted words about champions and choices. The commercial ended with Jordan and Jason walking side by side on the Bulls' court, while the tagline appeared, dedication, sacrifice, greatness, Gatorade. In the final shot, Jason took a drink from a Gatorade bottle, then passed it to Jordan, who nodded with approval. Before the screen faded to the Gatorade logo, the phone began ringing before the next segment of the game even started. That was amazing. Holly Humphrey's voice came through the receiver when Jason answered. You're famous. Similar calls followed, from classmates, teachers, neighbors, even Christopher Fletcher called, his usual confidence replaced by genuine admiration. Dude, you're in a commercial with Michael Jordan. That's the coolest thing ever. But the most meaningful reaction came later that night, after the calls had subsided and the excitement had settled into a quiet glow. Dawn sat beside Jason on the couch, both of them still processing the reality of seeing themselves on national television. Your father called, she said finally. Jason stiffened. Daniel Tate had left when Jason was 9, promising to stay in touch, to visit on holidays, to remain a presence in his son's life. Those promises had gradually evaporated, reduced to occasional birthday cards, and even more occasional phone calls that grew increasingly awkward as the distance between them widened. What did he want? Jason asked, trying to sound casual. He saw the commercial, Dawn explained. Said he was proud of you, wanted to know if he could call you tomorrow. Jason stared at the silent television, emotions churning inside him. 3 years of near absence, and now his father wanted to reconnect because he'd seen him in a Gatorade commercial with Michael Jordan. You don't have to talk to him if you don't want to, Dawn assured him, reading his expression. That's entirely your choice. Jason thought about choices then, about trading lunch for a poster, about what that simple decision had set in motion. He thought about Jordan's words, the kind of choice champions make every day. I'll talk to him, Jason decided, but not because I need to, because I want him to know I'm doing great, with or without him. Dawn smiled, pride evident in her eyes. That sounds like a champion's choice to me. The commercial aired throughout the playoffs, generating media interest that extended beyond sports outlets. Local news stations requested interviews, magazines wanted photo shoots, and talk shows extended invitations. Dawn carefully filtered these opportunities, accepting only those that wouldn't disrupt Jason's education or expose him to excessive public scrutiny. One morning in late May, as the school year neared its end, Jason arrived at his locker to find Holly Humphrey waiting for him, a magazine in her hands. "Have you seen this?" she asked, holding it out. It was Sports Illustrated's playoff special issue. And there, in a small photo accompanying an article about Jordan's off-court impact, was Jason. The caption read, "Jason Robles, whose lunch money sacrifice inspired Jordan and a nation of fans." "Weird," Jason said, studying the image, "but cool." You gonna be different next year?" Holly asked suddenly. "When we start 7th grade, Jason looked up from the magazine. "Different how?" "You know," she shrugged. "Famous. Too cool to hang out with regular kids." Jason closed his locker, considering the question seriously. The past month had been extraordinary. Meeting his hero, filming a commercial, experiencing a small taste of fame. But through it all, one thing had remained constant, his understanding of what truly mattered. "I traded lunch for a poster," he said finally. "Not my common sense." Holly smiled, relieved. "Good, because I was thinking we could be science partners. Next year, Ms. Meyer says we're doing a big project on engineering." "Engineering?" Jason perked up. "Definitely." As they walked to class together, Jason reflected on how much had changed since that day in Marvin's sports shop. He had assigned basketball, a college scholarship waiting for him, and a new sense of confidence. His mother was taking more nursing classes, their financial situation had improved, and they had memories they would cherish forever. But the most valuable thing he had gained wasn't material at all. It was the lesson Jordan had taught him. The dedication and sacrifice weren't just words on a commercial tagline, but principles to live by. That the choices you make, even small ones like trading lunch money for a poster, reveal who you truly are. And Jason Robles, once invisible, had been seen.